Hey guys, it's Sarah with AmericanTrucks.com, and today we have a review and install of the adjustable front upper control arms fitting your 04 and newer F-150s. This is perfect for the F-150 owner who has a lifted or lowered truck and wants a heavy-duty and more adjustable upper control arm. These control arms were designed for lowered, lifted, or leveled trucks, or even for those of you who want more camber and caster adjustment than the stock arms. They're made from steel and feature a gloss black powder coat finish. They also feature a fully adjustable heavy-duty ball joint with 80 degrees of articulation, which can help correct ball joint angle, a common problem on lifted or leveled trucks. The camber and caster adjustment ranges from -2 to 2 degrees and can be made via that upper ball joint. So as far as price goes, these control arms come in at around $650 for the pair, putting them on the higher end price-wise when compared to other options. And for your money, you're getting the most adjustable control arm on the market that gives you that heavy-duty ball joint to correct your ball joint angle and give you a camber and caster adjustment as well. And as far as the install goes, I'm giving this one a 3 out of 3 wrenches on the difficulty meter. They do feature a direct bolt-up installation with no modification required and can be done within 3 hours. So with that said, let's check out the install. For this install, we used an impact gun, but a regular hand ratchet will work just fine. You'll also need a pry bar, 15 and 18 millimeter wrenches, a flathead screwdriver, 32, 22, 21, 18, 13, 10, and 8 millimeter sockets. You may also want a swivel extension. You'll need a 5 millimeter Allen key or Allen socket, a grease gun, a caliper hanger or similar tool, a vacuum pump, pair of needle nose pliers. You may want a rubber mallet and you will need a hammer. So the first step in our uninstall is to get your truck in the air either on a lift or on jack stands and remove the front wheels. Once you've done that, we're gonna grab an 8 and 10 millimeter sockets and go ahead and remove 2 bolts on the inside of the knuckle. So you'll see 2 bolts on the side of the knuckle holding on an ABS and a brake line. What we're gonna do is remove these 2 bolts just to give these guys a little more slack when we go ahead and disconnect everything. Grab an 8 millimeter socket and remove the smaller bolt. And then this larger one holding on the brake line bracket is a 10 millimeter. And remove it out of that pocket as well. Next up, what we're gonna do is remove this brake caliper so that we can remove our rotor. Go ahead and grab a 21 millimeter socket and get the 2 bolts holding the caliper to the knuckle removed. So now that we have the bolts out of the caliper and bracket, what we're gonna do is use a pry bar, or you can go by hand and just wiggle this caliper off. If you're using the pry bar, just go between the bracket and the rotor. Just go ahead and pry backwards. And once it is removed, grab a caliper hanger or similar tool and hang it out of the way so there's not too much tension on the brake line. Now we can remove the rotor as well. If it's loose like ours, you can just go ahead and pull it off. If it's not loose, what you can do is you can tap with a rubber mallet just around the back side of here just to loosen it up. I would use a rubber mallet and not a hammer because you don't want to damage this because it will be going back on. Now we can see the dust shield. What we need to do is take the 3 8 millimeter bolts and remove them. Grab that 8 millimeter socket and get your bolts out. And remove it. Now that the dust shield is out of the way, you can see this sensor that's right in the top of your knuckle. What you're gonna do is grab a 5 millimeter Allen key or Allen socket, go ahead and remove this. Wiggle out the sensor and set it aside so it doesn't get damaged when you remove the knuckle. Next up, we're gonna remove the nut on the bottom of the outer tie rod. Grab a 21mm socket and go ahead and get this removed. Now what you can do is wiggle and remove this. If it does not want to come out, you can tap on the side of the knuckle to release that ball joint. Now we are going to remove the axle out of the knuckle, so we do need to remove this dust shield. Just go ahead and get behind it with a flathead in a circular motion and pry it out. Now we're moving on to the back of the knuckle, and we're going to remove this vacuum line. Just pull to remove it. And now with a vacuum pump, slide the hose over the larger port, and then we're gonna pull vacuum so we can remove the knuckle. Now what we're gonna do is pull vacuum on that line that we just installed at the back of the knuckle. This is important because you need to pull vacuum on this in order to not damage the four-wheel drive actuator when you remove this knuckle. Now you can get this strut out without removing the knuckle, but I think it is a lot easier to do so, so we're gonna continue with removing it. Go ahead and pull about 20 PSI on the vacuum pump. That should be enough to release that actuator so we can remove it. Once you've done that, make sure you keep the pressure and set this to the side. Next up, we're gonna grab a 13mm socket and remove the nut that holds on the axle. Next up, we're gonna remove the nut on the bottom of our upper ball joint and release it from the knuckle. Grab an 18mm socket, and you may need a swivel extension. Go ahead, get this removed. And what I am gonna do is thread this back on a bit because we will have to strike this top of the knuckle in order to release it fully. Now, in order to release this upper ball joint, what we're gonna do is strike the knuckle on the side here, and we do have the nut on the bottom to catch it, and you should see it release. Go ahead and grab your hammer and strike the knuckle. Now what we're gonna do is use a pry bar to pry down on the upper control arm to remove the nut, and then we can release the upper control arm from the knuckle. And finally, we're gonna remove the nut on the lower control arm so that we can release it from the lower ball joint. Grab a 21mm socket and go ahead and remove this nut. Now, same thing as the upper ball joint, we're gonna thread it back on a little bit. And as you can see, it actually released right now. So do make sure you have a hand on there. But if it doesn't release, you can do the same thing as the upper ball joint. You can tap the back of this to release it. And now that both ball joints are released, go ahead and wiggle the knuckle and pull it down and out to remove it off the truck. Now that we have the knuckle off, I can show you what I'm talking about. There's a ring in there with teeth on it. That is the actuator that engages the four-wheel drive. You can see it move up when we pull pressure. And once we release the pressure, you'll see the gear go back down. And next up, we're gonna disconnect the sway bar end link by removing the nut on the bottom side of it. We're on the bottom of the control arm now, so grab a 18mm socket and go ahead and remove this nut. Next up, we have two 18mm nuts right next to that. These hold on the bottom of the strut, so go ahead and remove both of those as well. Next up, we're gonna disconnect the top of the strut from the strut tower here. It's 3 15mm bolts. So grab a 15mm socket, or you may want a ratcheting wrench, just because there's not a ton of space up top. Go ahead and get these removed. I'm gonna leave one of the front nuts on just loosely to hold it in place, while we remove the one all the way at the rear, which is a little bit harder to get to. So we have the two nuts removed up top. We still have one loosely installed in this corner here. And what we're gonna do is, while that nut holds it in place, we're gonna put a pry bar underneath the strut, pry down, and remove it out of the lower control arm. And now that it is released from the lower control arm, we can lift up, remove that final nut up top, and remove the strut assembly. With the strut removed, we can now remove the control arm. You'll see a bolt on the inside of each control arm and the corresponding nut on the outside. What we're gonna do is grab a 21mm socket and an 18mm wrench. Go ahead and break this loose. Now you can repeat that on the other side. Now you can mark this control arm to try to get the other one in the same general area, but because the other one is adjustable, you can also adjust it once that's installed. Go ahead and grab that 21mm socket and get this nut loose as well. And remove the control arm. All right, now that we have our factory control arm uninstalled from our truck, we can check it out side by side with our new control arm here. Now the biggest difference is the ball joint. This upgraded ball joint features 80 degrees of articulation, perfect for those of you with lifted or lowered trucks. In addition, because of the adjustability of this ball joint, you can have a caster and camber adjustment of -2 to 2 degrees. It also features heavy-duty cast steel construction with a nice black finish, so it looks similar to your factory control arm. So with that said, let's go ahead and finish up our install. Now we can install the new upper control arm. Once it's in place, what we can do is slide the OE hardware all the way through. Line it up and install it in your other side as well. Now what we're gonna do is snug these up, but we're not gonna fully tighten them until the vehicle's on the ground, so that we don't have any premature bushing wear up here in these bushings. But just go ahead and get them pretty snug with your 21 and 18. This little star plate here is for the caster adjustment. We're gonna select a neutral caster adjustment for now. Now if you do need to change this, all you have to do is pop the ball joint out and just change this plate, and that'll change the caster. Then once you have this plate in your desired adjustment location, what you're gonna do is line it up in these 2 grooves in the upper control arm. Now once it is sitting in the grooves, you can see the top here, and this is going to be your caster adjustment. Again, I'm going to pick a neutral caster adjustment, and then you can always adjust this later on once your vehicle is on the ground. Then once you have your ball joint in the proper camber adjustment, grab a 31mm wrench. I'm using an adjustable just because I don't have that size on hand. And I'm just gonna snug this up for now. We'll tighten it down again on the ground. Now you can reinstall your strut. Grab one of your nuts and slide it over top to hold it in place. Now you can line up the bottom of your strut. What you're gonna do is use a pry bar to pry down on the lower control arm and slide it in place. Now you can go ahead and slide the rest of those nuts on top of the studs on top of your strut. Then grab your 15mm socket or ratcheting wrench and tighten it down. Now we can go underneath the strut assembly and replace the 2 nuts. You may need to pry up on the lower control arm in order to get this to sit properly. Then grab your 18mm socket and tighten it down. And while you're under here, you can replace the nut on the sway bar end link. Now, if you aren't doing both sides simultaneously, I recommend leaving this off until the very end and then reinstalling them. Either way, when you're ready, grab your 18mm socket and tighten it down. Now you can grab your knuckle, make sure the pressure is still being pulled by the vacuum pump. Line it up over top of your lower control arm, ball joint, and also the axle as well. It may take a little bit of finagling to get everything lined up. But once you have it in place, go ahead and install the nut on your lower ball joint. And we'll start to line up the axle as well. Grab the axle nut and thread it in place just to make sure we hold the axle in. Then grab your 21mm socket and tighten down your lower ball joint. And now you can line up your upper ball joint into the knuckle. Grab the included castle nut. Thread it on. Then with a 22mm socket, and you may want a swivel extension, tighten it down. Now, if you can't see the opening in the ball joint through one of the edges of the castle nut, you can grab a 22mm wrench and twist it until you see the opening. Once you've done that, slide your cotter pin in. I like to go through the back so it's easier to bend, but you can go through either way. Grab a needle nose and pull it through. And then you're just gonna bend the ends of the cotter pin. This locks that castle nut in place. Make sure your axle's all the way through. Just check to see if you see the shoulder all the way on the back past the threads. If not, you can pull from the back and fully seat it. Then grab your 13mm socket and tighten it down. Now you can grab the dust cover, slide it over top of that axle nut, and then you can press it or with a rubber mallet, lightly tap it into place. Now you can release vacuum, disconnect the line from the vacuum pump, line up your OE vacuum line, and keep in mind there are 2 different size posts coming off the back of the knuckle. Make sure you line it up correctly. Now you can replace the sensor in the top of the knuckle. Line up that factory Allen head bolt. Grab a 5mm Allen socket or Allen key and tighten it down. Be careful not to over tighten this because it is plastic. Now you can replace the dust shield. Be careful to line it up properly over that sensor you just installed so it doesn't get damaged. Replace the factory 8mm bolts. And with your 8mm socket, tighten them down. Now you can replace the rotor, slide it over your wheel studs, and I like to throw a lug nut on there to hold it in place while we finish the install. Grab your caliper and slide it over top of the rotor. Maneuver it in place and grab your factory bolts. Now you can replace those factory bolts through the back of the knuckle into your caliper bracket. And with a 21mm socket, you may want a swivel socket, tighten it down. Grab your outer tie rod and line it up with the knuckle. Thread your nut on the bottom of the factory ball joint. Grab your 21mm socket and tighten it down. Now we can line up the two lines on the side of our knuckle. We're going to start with a small 8mm bolt that holds on our sensor line. Grab an 8mm socket and tighten it down. And just keep in mind this is plastic, so try not to over tighten. Repeat that process with the brake line bracket. Make sure the tab is in the opening there, and then thread in your bolt. Then with your 10mm socket, tighten it down. Now we have the vehicle on its own weight. We have a wheel on here. Alternatively, you can jack up on the lower control arm with all of your other wheels on. Now we have the control arm in its proper position, and now we can tighten down these bolts that go through the bushings. Grab that 21mm socket like you did before, and tuck that 18mm wrench on the inside of your strut assembly to hold it in place while you tighten it down. Tighten it the rest of the way and make sure it's torqued to spec. And repeat that on the other side to tighten down the other bolt going through your control arm. Now we can tighten down the top nut here. Keep in mind it is for your camber adjustment, so make sure your camber is where you want it. Grab a 32mm socket. Go ahead and tighten this down. And now go ahead and grease this ball joint. What you're gonna do is grab a grease gun and slide it over top of the grease fitting on the top of the control arm. And then pump with the grease gun until you see the boot on the ball joint expand. This might be a little hard to see from where we're looking. Should be about 5 or 6 pumps. Remove the grease gun and wipe away any excess up top. All right, now that this side is complete, make sure you repeat all of those steps on your other side. Make sure everything is torqued to spec, and you will need a professional alignment afterwards. But that is going to do it for the review and install of these adjustable control arms. And for everything F-150, keep it right here at AmericanTrucks.com.